of all the members that were there?
But we did have a quorum, so we
Okay.
did have a quorum.
So all the members that participated voted?
No, they didn't.
You had members there, you said there was an individual that was not in attendance, and so there were others present.
That did not vote.
That did not vote?
Correct.
Why would you be attending and not voting? Was there a reason?
I don't know what I can and cannot answer when it comes to the cone of silence right here, Mr. Carlin. Can I talk about these issues with the CUSAC? But I will say there was a member, and that is a public record because we do have that. So yeah, there was one member there who came and did not vote when it was time to vote.
And was there?
They said that they didn't agree with the process and did not vote.
I appreciate that, but Mr. Carlin I know there's many times on items here that I would prefer not to vote, to be quite honest. But we have an obligation to. So does the same apply to a CUSAC committee member?
Yes, ma'am. The superintendent asked me to look at the issue for clarification. He wanted to understand the issue as well. We did some research. The section I think you're referring to in Florida statute is 286.012. And that is the section that we've talked about several times here, which obligates the board members to register a vote if you're present for the meeting, unless you announce a voting conflict and abstain from the vote. There is an Attorney General opinion from 2002 that applies that same requirement to advisory board members or committee members who are working on a committee that ultimately makes recommendations to the governing body.
Well, I think it's important that we share that information with, procurement, so they're well aware. And I also think that it needs to be shared with the memberships of those individuals that participate, that they have an obligation. And should a member not vote and they have an obligation, then what happens then? Because that has the potential to change outcomes. And so I'm extremely concerned about that. And I think that through the chair, I would suggest that we share that our legal department provides some kind of written correspondence to those serving on the committee, and certainly any individual that did not cast a vote on the matter. And if they had some kind of conflict, then certainly maybe they didn't understand that they had to fill out conflict of interest forms. And I would certainly hope that we could share that with them so they could comply. But my hope is that, everything that we do, again, in the best way possible with the public's best interest. And so I need to make sure that if we have these committee structures, we have them in place for a reason. Every vote is critical to the outcome of a process. And so I'm a little disturbed of what's transpired, and I think something needs to be followed up with regard to that matter.
And let's make it clear, I'm the member of CUSAC who refused to vote as an experiment to see what would happen if I said I'm going to abstain. What should have occurred is that I should have been advised that I had to vote, in which case I would have simply voted no. I also did not participate in the evaluation because based on my knowledge, I was uncomfortable. I made it very clear that I was uncomfortable participating willingly in a process where they had not convinced me that they were not about to violate a number of state statutes and board policies. Now, I haven't yet advised you specifically of the SREF, CCNA, board policy, and CUSAC bylaws violations, but I can certainly do so. So let's start with the CUSAC composition. CUSAC has a standing membership of 9 members for pre-qual and 11 for selections such as this one. The minority builders were unable to attend. That is true, but that's about where things end in terms of truthfulness. Heron Heights and Park Trails principals were both there, but there's only one vote. They were each allowed to vote. So if we want to start talking about changing outcomes, they should have done something with their scores, average them together, I don't know what, have them come to an agreement. That's supposed to be one vote. They each had a vote, so that's 2 votes instead of 1. There seems to be some confusion on the part of staff that the coordinator of MWBE or designee is a standing member of CUSAC and should have been evaluating and voting in the committee selection process. That didn't happen either, so instead of worrying about me not voting, I would worry about the fact that the MWBE did not evaluate all the proposals. What's even more concerning is that according to CUSAC bylaws, the chair of CUSAC should have been running the meeting. That didn't happen either. The meeting was chaired and controlled completely by Ms. Ruby Crenshaw. She is not the chair of CUSAC. And there are others I could go on to list, but I'm going to run out of time. Okay, now, coming up on Thursday, there were only 3 sentences put out into the atmosphere regarding Thursday's meeting. The 3 sentences contradict each other. I'm not quite sure what I'm walking into on Thursday, because the ad says that the purpose of the meeting is to score the proposals, and then in the email, there are 2 sentences. One says the evaluation committee will reconvene to review, evaluate, and recommend award, and the other one says that the highest ranking firm, that negotiations with the highest ranking firm were
Okay,
unsuccessful.
Mr. Cervola is indicating he's sharing time. Yes, Mr. Cervola?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the second sentence says that negotiations with the highest ranking firm were unsuccessful, therefore the committee will reconvene to recommend the second highest firm. Now, if I've already expressed my concerns regarding the conflicting nature of these 3 statements to Mr. Carland, per protocol, I don't expect a response from him, but you should be very concerned that you have staff that can't write 3 sentences that agree with each other and not worry about what I am or am not doing when I attend a CUSAC meeting, when all I'm trying to do is get the district to do what it's supposed to do, dot its I's, cross its T's, follow the law, follow board policy, and quit making a mockery of every process that they undertake. So on Thursday, my expectation is that given shock that the award went to the bidder that was more than $1 million over budget, that it would go to the second highest ranked proposer who was only about $140,000 over budget and was in fact the lowest bidder. That would be the thing that makes common sense, and that would take about 5 minutes. But I don't know if that's what's going to happen on Thursday because we have 2 other sentences that suggest that they're going to be scoring things again. So that's that. Now, on the agenda for the 8th, there's an agenda item at that original meeting where it says motion to approve the low bidder. Well, we didn't approve the low bidder. It was on the agenda. It was part of somebody's game plan, but apparently they had no roadmap for how to get there. So there are a number of issues that have to do with the competency of staff and not with, I have no control over bringing a process to a grinding halt. But just as this cone of silence gets used like the Fifth Amendment when in fact it pertains to lobbyists and proposers contacting anyone other than the person they're supposed to, what does apply is sunshine law. I cannot be speaking to another member of the CUSAC committee. That's the thing that's relevant. Stop with the cone of silence. It's the sunshine law that stands to be violated if everyone's talking to each other. So for instance, if 2 staff members are talking to each other about the selection, that's a violation of sunshine law. That would be the problem. Cone of silence is not relevant to this. But I'm very offended personally as someone who puts in a ton of time volunteering to make our schools better, because I have 2 kids that attend public school, and there are people who ask me on a daily basis, how is it you don't go down there and lose it? I'm very close to losing it. But it's because I have a lot of support that I do not. But I am offended by the suggestion that because the task force goes above and beyond within the scope of our policy, which is policy 7012, which no one seems familiar with, that we're criticized, and it feels like a witch hunt against us simply because we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Is there other public comment on LL5?